Perfect. Well, I'm so happy that you guys can join us tonight. This is a bonus meeting, and we're so happy to have Megan here with us today. She is the 2020 Nebraska Teacher of the Year, and like Dr. Coe said, we'll kind of let you, yes. And she's from Burwell, so nice rural community for her to come from, and several of you may be familiar with the area, so I'll kind of let Megan introduce herself a little bit more, but we're so happy for you guys to join us, and we're excited to hear from you today, Megan.
Great. Thank you guys for having me. So I will just say I have found that when I absolutely love talking to a group of college students like this, and I hope you're okay that I have no PowerPoint slides because I have found that it's kind of soul crushing after a while of PowerPoint slides. So I just want to really just talk and kind of have a conversation and like be real with you about teaching and answer some of your questions that maybe you're afraid to ask and kind of just get down to the nitty gritty. But yes, thank you for having me. My name is Megan Helberg. I am from the small little rural town of Taylor, Nebraska. Population 190. And if you weren't here earlier, I gave a shout out to Riley because Riley and I went to the same high school. So go Wildcats. So I graduated with 10 people from Loop County. Really had a wonderful experience at a small school. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But I really had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated from high school. I wasn't one of those people that was like, oh, since I was 4, I wanted to be a teacher and I've been like dreaming of my classroom. No, that was totally not me at all. And I was very interested in the medical field. And my dad had a heart transplant when I was 10 years old. And so I got really interested in pharmacy and the medications that helped him stay alive on a day-to-day basis. So I really thought, so I went to college at Chadron, go Eagles, loved Chadron State. It was a great fit for me. I did some sports up there and I just really had a great college experience. It was like the equal parts of, fun and education as college should be, right? It's also social and that's where you learn those things. And then I really got interested in pharmacy. I graduated with a business degree because again, I was like, I just went to college and decided. I dabbled in a few different areas. I took one education class at Chadron and was like, that is not for me. Like, no thanks, okay? And I should mention that at Taylor, my mom was my social studies teacher for 6 years. My mom was the 7 through 12 social studies teacher. And my mom was a very highly decorated teacher. She has done amazing things. And so I really was kind of like, well, that's what my mom does. That's kind of her thing. And so I wanted to forge my own path, so to speak. So went to Chadron, got the business degree, but started working pretty heavily in pharmacy. I was working at the pharmacy in Chadron, decided to move to Omaha after graduation and actually continue down the pharmacy route, was taking very heavy classes in math and science. I was working at a pharmacy in Omaha. And even though I respect that profession greatly, I came home one day and was like, this is just not for me. Like, it is not bringing me joy. And it was a little bit more retail than I wanted it to be. I felt like I was just kind of working at a store and I wanted more of the like medical aspect of it. And so that's when my then fiance, now husband, Dan, sat me down on the couch and he's like, well, what does bring you joy? And I honestly think it sounds kind of cheesy, but I think that was the first time in my life that someone actually just asked me point blank, like to my face, like, what do you really enjoy and what are your strengths? And let's talk it out, So we started talking it out and I was like, I've always loved reading. I've always enjoyed being around people. I really love learning. Like, I always say, like, wouldn't it be just disgusting if you were a know-it-all? Like, gross, okay? Like, I never want to know it all. I always want to be a continual learner. And I really loved the feeling of being a part of a community. And so that is when we decided to make the decision to move back home to a good old Taylor Burwell area. And I accepted an English teaching position there. And this is now my 11th year at Burwell. So it feels crazy. It's been a great experience. But so that's kind of how I got to teaching. So I guess I should mention, I went through UNK's program, the Transition to Teach program, which was absolutely wonderful. So if you guys have friends out there, friends, family members that are thinking about a second career or thinking about, kind of jumping over and doing something different, the Transition to Teach program, if you're not familiar with it, you guys probably are because you're at UNK, but if you've graduated already with your, from undergrad and you've kept a certain GPA throughout that, you can basically do an accelerated program to help get into the classroom sooner. And you get paid while you do your student teaching. So that's awesome as well. So my very first teaching job was my student teaching as well. You don't do student teaching. You just go in the classroom and it's like, hey, okay, here I am. So, and then somebody comes and observes you like every month, but it was awesome. It's all online, which was great because at the time we were in Omaha and we were not expecting to move. My husband is also a teacher and he was teaching and coaching at Papillion La Vista down there. And we thought that was where we were going to be for a while. But when that position came open in Burwell, it was like, I kind of looked at him. He's not from this area and you can't just drag anybody like back to Taylor, Nebraska. And so I said, if we do this, it's probably for life. We're probably going to be lifers. Like, are you okay with that? And he said, absolutely. He loved the community and we live on the ranch where I grew up. My parents' house is just like 50 yards that way. And so here I am at Burwell. And now 2020 has been kind of a crazy year for many reasons. But Teacher of the Year, I was announced named Teacher of the Year last October. So it's just been over a year. Nebraska's Teacher of the Year, it's a calendar year. So you go from January 1st to December 31st. So I have just a couple months left in my reign. And then I will hand off the torch to Mr. Tim, who just got named the Teacher of the Year just last week or so. From Lyons Decatur School, so another kind of smaller school. So that was exciting. He's a science guy down there. So, but anyway, I just want to, you guys have to interrupt me or else I'll just keep talking. So if you have questions, just jump in, but I am like not short on talking. So I can just, as Brooke and Jacob know. So they're being so nice and polite right now. I was just going to go over a few of kind of like my teaching philosophy, some of the highs and lows that I've experienced in teaching, and especially this year. Are any of you out there, like, just maybe show of hands, like, are you almost done? Like, are you getting ready to, if you're getting ready to start your student teaching soon, like maybe raise your hand, like next semester or something like that. Okay, so a lot of you on this call, that's awesome. Anybody 7 through 12, raise their hand. Oh, cool. And any elementary folks? Some of those. I'm 7 through 12. So I teach English at Burwell. I teach 8th grade and I teach juniors and seniors. So I get a nice mix of age levels, which I actually really like. At first, it was kind of intimidating because I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But I actually really enjoy it because it's different and I really get to see the kids grow up and see them mature, most of them, and just kind of continue that growth with them. You can start a unit in 8th grade, and like really build on it and really make it a powerful, lasting, experience for them by the time they graduate. So that's been fun. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, why Burwell? Oh, I see a question here. Okay, yes. So why Burwell? Why small schools? I really want to give a plug because it seems like a lot of people that are in your shoes, you have like this dream school in your mind. Like, I really want to get a job at this school for this grade level, and that would just be amazing. Okay, that's what I really want. And I would really just encourage you to be open to many different schools and many different situations, including the small schools. Because I will tell you what, at a small school, you really have the potential to make a huge impact on your students. And not only the school, but the community. And that to me is something that I knew that I really valued. I really am a big proponent of fighting for small towns and encouraging, people to see the value in their hometown and what it can be. And so for me, the small town has been great because I'm not just a part of the school, I'm a part of the community. And to me, that's really important. And that's how I get to meet parents and just other stakeholders in the school board members, stuff like that. So they get to know me outside of the classroom, hopefully in a positive way, right? So then if there is a problem at school, it's not like the first interaction that they've had with me is this negative one, right? Where I'm having to call home for a bad reason or something like that. So in bigger schools, to be quite honest, that's usually how it is. You usually don't have a lot of interaction with, parents. You usually don't have a lot of interaction with the community members. You don't even really see your students outside of school. Like when we were in Papio, I mean, I rarely saw any of the students that I work with there outside of the community. Whereas in Burwell, I mean, I see them all the time. Okay. And I actually like that. Okay. I like that I'm visible, that I'm transparent. They can see what I do in the community as well as in school, and it helps build those connections. So I'd really just encourage you, don't be afraid of the small schools. Apply for everything, right? Like when I was my first year of teaching, I was like, I'm just going to apply for every job opening. I don't care where it is. And I'm just going to see where it goes. And it worked out great. Also, the small schools, if you haven't figured this out yet, small schools, you have a lot of autonomy, meaning you can kind of do what you want as long as you are covering the standards and you're not doing anything like, super radical or dangerous, or you know what I mean. At a large school, so I guess I should backtrack just a second. My very first year of teaching was at Papillion La Vista. I actually taught at the Zoo Academy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. So my classroom was actually at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha in the basement of the Lead Jungle, and it was kind of cool. It was juniors and seniors only. They had to apply to be in this program. It was like a kind of prestigious program for them where they were doing pretty heavy, serious internships at the zoo, and they went off to amazing colleges and Ivy League colleges and things like that. So that was my very first teaching position, which was awesome because I got to do all the behind the scenes stuff at the zoo. But here's the deal. At Papillion La Vista and any larger school district like that, you don't get to make up your own quizzes. You don't get to make up your own test. You don't get to do any of that. Which as a first year teacher, that was awesome. Everything was just handed to me. So they're like, oh, you're reading The Great Gatsby? Here's the quiz for chapter 1. Here's the quiz for chapter 2, and here's the test. The English department makes that up themselves. So at those bigger schools like in Omaha and Lincoln, at least what I've experienced and what I've talked with people, that's how it is. So again, first year teacher, pretty nice. Okay, it took a lot of pressure off. Now, when I came to Burwell, I stole that stuff, right? I mean, I took what I wanted and I said, I'm going to take this. I really liked this piece and I didn't really like that. I'm going to come up with something different for that. So I felt like Burwell now is a great fit for me, or any small school, because I do have that great foundation that I got at Papillion La Vista to kind of get me started, because I know that everything I did there went through a very rigorous vetting process. And so I got to take that great foundation, then build off of it from there and have it reflect my strengths and my areas of interest. So that's my plug for the small school. Plus you get to be really well-rounded because you're like, hey, you're going to coach speech and junior high track and volleyball, and you're going to do this, right? So sometimes we kind of poo-poo that, or that extra duties as assigned is oh my gosh, okay, if you guys don't know about that, that's what it's called, right, in the contract, extra duties as assigned, and you don't have a say in them, you just have to do them. And a lot of times it's oh, gross, I really don't want to do that. But then when you start doing it, it's amazing because you get to learn yourself about something that maybe you weren't that strong in before, which again makes you just a more well-rounded person. And you get to see kids in a really different light and help them. And it's just fun. So I want to kind of don't look at that as like an awful thing, but look at it as a great way to grow and learn yourself. And it makes you more marketable, because then let's say you don't stay at that school forever, you can add that to your resume, like, hey, I coach speech, or hey, I dabbled in a little bit of junior high track. Okay, so like oh, they could help with this or that when you're helping, sending out your resume to the next place. Last thing on that, and then I'll move on to the question. So my last thing with that is, let's say you get a job at a school and it's really like, you're like, like trying to convince yourself that you're happy, right? You're like, oh, I got a job, yay, but it's not, it was like 7th on my list, okay? So here's the deal. Once you get that job and you accept it, it doesn't really matter what you think about that school or that community or those kids, because you're there and you are now responsible to teach those kids to the best of your ability. It is now your responsibility to leave that place better than you found it, right? We all hear that, but take that to heart as a teacher. Like, don't go in there and be like, oh, I'm just going to get through this year till I can apply and go someplace else. Go in there and light that place up, right? Like, go in there with some fantastic lessons. Go in there with like over the top enthusiasm, and really make that place, when you leave, make them go, oh man, we're really going to miss them, instead of, glad to see them go, right? Like, you never know in your career when that stuff will come back full circle. So I just really want to put that impression on you of, once you accept it, hey, you've accepted it, and now it's on you to make the most of it. And like, this is like my new thing now, is like, look for the good, right? In those students, look for the good in that community. And here's the catch, like, let's say you can't see any, you're like, literally, I look around me and I can't see like anything good going on. Well, here's the kicker, kids. You can create good, right? Like, you have the ability to create good. And I just think that's an amazing like ability. And it takes such a weight off of us of like, if we go in some place that's kind of crappy, hey, guess what? I can turn this place around, or I can make this classroom how I want it to be, So don't be afraid to create good, because you're all capable of it. So there's that. Let me see this question here. With being thrown into a classroom, how did you know how to manage your classroom? Honestly, guys, like everything that you do with teaching, all these education classes that you're taking, they're wonderful. I'm not going to knock them. Okay. You need them. But honestly, when you get into the classroom your first day, it's like, oh, did I actually go to school for this? Because I really feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay. So you're just going to go into the classroom, and don't feel like you're alone on that, because every single teacher, if they tell you that they were totally ready, they're completely lying. So you go in, and that first year is interesting, because you're literally sometimes like one day ahead of the students, like, or maybe sometimes even one class period. Like, you're in there like, okay, I just got to finish this chapter before the kids get in here, right? So, and that's okay. All right. Like, you will figure it out. I have found with, and even like Brooke and Jake, I can't remember how many years I've been teaching by that point, but I still felt like I was still kind of finding my strengths and still kind of trying to iron out what works and what doesn't. And to be honest, I'm still doing that, right? And I hope that we all know those teachers that 40 years down the road, they're still doing the exact same thing they did 40 years ago. And it's like, if it's working, okay, that's great. That's one thing. But sometimes it's not always working. And so it's like, you constantly have to keep yourself in check and be honest with yourself. Like, oh, that lesson sucked. Like, I will not be doing that again next year. Okay. And just having the ability to just be honest with yourself and be real with yourself, and even to your students, be like, yeah, guys, sorry, that didn't go exactly as planned. Now, if you're doing that every day, now that's a problem. Okay. But if you have, a bad lesson every now and then, it's okay. And don't just try to pretend your way through it, because your students will be like, oh, that was weird, right? Just be like, yeah, sorry, guys, that was a bad one. Sorry about that. I'll make it up tomorrow. Okay. With classroom management, though, some schools have block scheduling where the classes are much longer, and some have regular. Burwell has, we call it a modified block. So I have some 50-minute classes, and I have some hour and 45-minute classes. What I have found, or however long they are. Anyway, what I have found is about every Little things can go a long way to keep people engaged. The first thing is little movements can really help. So it's not like you have to do some big, like, oh, we're going to do something fun, or we're going to do like, oh, this is so exciting. Like, look at this. Just literally like where I have the vocab books, they're over in a cabinet in my classroom. So, okay, go get your vocab books. The kids are actually physically standing up. They get some movement. They have to go grab their vocab books, come down, do their vocab. When we're done with vocab, hey, stand up, put your vocab book away. So just being aware of that little stuff. You don't have to plan, okay, guys, we're going to get up and we're all going to, do 5 jumping jacks and run around the room and go walk down the hallway. Just be like mindful, like little movements like that. Or, okay, guys, come on up and grab a pen, just getting that. They don't even think that it's out of the ordinary, but it is, without them even knowing it, it's keeping them more engaged because you're adding in little movements every now and then like that. The other thing is be working on something. Like people ask me like, oh, how do you keep kids engaged? Well, if you just let them sit there, oh, we got 15 minutes left of class, but oh, well, I guess you guys can just look at your phones for 15 minutes. Like, no, okay, maybe the last couple minutes, but not like, so you as a teacher have to be aware of how long stuff is going to take. So my advice is I always do every worksheet, every quiz, every test that my students do. And then I add at least 10 minutes because I know all the answers, right? Like I know all the answers, because here's one of my pet peeves. When kids come in late to my class and I say, oh, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I was finishing up a test in the class before me. That is on the teacher, okay? That's their bad, because they should have known if the test is going to be too long and the kids are going to be running over time, take a few questions away, okay? Like, don't make them then cut out part of their next class. So you as a teacher, that's kind of your job to make sure, and you need to adjust that from year to year. Now, obviously, there are some students that, there's modifications and things like that. But I'm just talking your average student. If it's taken everybody too long or a few people too long, cut out some questions, okay? Be mindful of what you are giving out. Okay, next thing. We're going on here. I'm just rambling. Some of the things that I'm very passionate about that has really changed not just my teaching life, but my just personal life as well, is my passion and kind of my niche in education is Holocaust and genocide education. So my mom was a Holocaust educator, like before it was like a buzzword or anything like that. So I grew up always knowing more about the Holocaust than like my peers did. And then you go off to college, you're doing your own thing and, whatever. When I got my first teaching job back at Burwell, I was a little, I guess, alarmed that there was no Holocaust education really being taught, because I really do believe that it is such an important event, not only in history, but that we can apply many of the lessons to be learned to today's world, especially in 2020. Am I right? Okay. There's lots of things going on out there that are not okay. All right. And we need to be aware of these things and see the warning signs that these little steps lead to something a lot more major. And we have to be aware of it as a society. So anyway, I really got involved in Holocaust genocide education. This is something that I want you guys to write down or keep in your head, is this grant. It's called Fund for Teachers, F-U-N-D, Fund for Teachers. I think you guys are a little too early on in your careers yet, but I think you have to be teaching for 3 years to apply. Once you've been teaching for 3 years, you can apply to go anywhere in the world, as long as you can explain how you are going to bring it back to your classroom and implement it into your class and make a difference, and your community. They ask about your class and your community. So I wrote a grant. I'd never written anything like this before, and I was lucky enough to get it. And so mine was a Holocaust studies trip to Poland, Germany, and the Czech Republic. I did not go with a tour group. Like, looking back on this, I'm like, I cannot believe we did this. But it was just my husband and I. We had no tour guide or anything like that. We planned the whole trip ourselves. It was my first time to Europe, and which now just seems crazy. And we went over there, got a rental car, and we went to a lot of different major Holocaust related sites and Jewish life sites. I not only wanted to study the Holocaust, but I wanted to study just Jewish life in general, especially pre-Holocaust. And so that was, needless to say, kind of a life-changing trip. We went to Auschwitz and Majdanek and Treblinka and the Nazi headquarters and all over Berlin, and then went to Prague in the Czech Republic, which was like the most beautiful European city. And that's where there was a large population of Jewish people before the Holocaust, and studied kind of some pre-Jewish life there. So went on this amazing trip. With the grant money, I had scheduled and budgeted in money for books, for Holocaust related literature books that were grade appropriate for each of the grades in the school, and started doing a Holocaust literature unit. And it's been really good, I think. And some of the books have changed and evolved since then, and I've made some changes in titles and stuff like that. But really from there, things just kind of like snowballed in a good way. I went to the Holocaust Museum in DC to a training. While I was at that training, I was approached by some of the museum staff, and they had asked me to apply for a fellowship program that they have. And I thought, oh geez, they only select 20 each year from the entire world. It's a worldwide thing. And I was lucky enough to be selected as one of the teacher fellows. They call them a museum teacher fellow. So what that meant is now basically I go to the museum every year for continuing education, but it's like the best continuing education on the planet, right? For that, the Holocaust Museum in DC is known. They are the leader worldwide for Holocaust education. What you think about it is a little odd since it didn't happen in this country, but that is where the majority of the archives are, historians, researchers, authors, survivors. So that's been an amazing, I just feel very thankful and grateful for those opportunities. From there, I met this guy named Carl Wilkins, and he was the only man to stay in Rwanda, Africa in 1994 during the genocide that took place there. And so then he invited me to go on a trip to Rwanda with him just a couple summers ago and study the genocide in Rwanda, but also how far Rwanda has come in the last 25 years. And they have a really amazing restorative justice program, and something that we could all learn some lessons from. But Rwanda got into my heart big time, like big time. And that is where I have developed this whole looking for the good motto that has become my life's motto, and creating good around me. Even though Rwanda has come a really long way, they are still one of the 20 poorest countries in the world. People there do not have running water. Many of them do not have electricity, things like that. We went to many schools, and school is not mandatory there because it costs money. And so a lot of kids who cannot afford it, there are like these nonprofit organizations that have opened up to try to get kids into some sort of programs during the day. And some of them are just absolutely amazing. But, you know, this is like, I don't want to just tell like sob stories from it or whatever, but like when you go to a person's home and it's made out of mud, and then you go in and they treat you with such graciousness and hospitality, and the kid is showing you around their 2-room mud hut, and you go to the kid's bedroom and his bed is literally like a dog bed that we would like that many Americans have for their pets. It just does something to you. And even now I have only spoke publicly about Rwanda once, because I still, even a couple years later, I'm having a hard time just appropriately putting into words the experience that I felt there, and how it just changed my entire like soul. It was one of those things where you don't even really know you need it or wanted to change, but you welcome it. It was like something really transformational occurred. So even in the last couple of years, my teaching has really evolved because of that experience. And I really just learned to show a little bit more grace towards students. When you're a first year teacher, and even me for a couple years, man, I was harsh on those, like, oh, it's late. Okay, like no questions asked, and sometimes, that's appropriate, but sometimes it's not, and I have learned that through the years to just look for the good in those kids. And how I'm doing that then in the classroom, you may ask, is we all know those kids, right? There's always those kids in your classroom that are just kind of a constant thorn in your side, right? Like either it's they're not going to do any work, or they're always just kind of constantly like making fun of you a little bit, and they think that like you don't know, but it's like, and or just, things like that. And it's easy to, like, when that kid comes in the next day, be like, oh, I have just about had it with this kid, or I just can't stand this kid. I can't wait until this year is over. Okay. But I had to really check myself on that, because here's the deal. Like, if you're in the business of holding grudges, then you should not be in the business of education, because every single day that kid deserves a clean slate. And so do I. Right? Like we all do in education. So I want my students to feel like, oh, they really messed up yesterday. Like maybe they did something inappropriate. They did really bad on assignment, or they didn't do any work, or they mouthed off or something. The next day when they come in, I want them to still feel welcomed. I want them to still feel loved. I want them to still feel like, hey, I'm your teacher. That was yesterday. Okay, let's let it go. Today's today. Now, I'm not saying you don't reprimand students when things are going on. You have to, you have to get on them a little bit, but then end it. Okay. The next day is the next day. Clean slate, like no holding grudges. And I see that so often with teachers, where we want to just, here's another pet peeve. Say it's the 7th graders, and I'm going to get them next year as 8th graders. And all the 7th grade teachers come up to me and say, oh, watch out for so-and-so. You'll be in for a real treat when you get them. I hate that. Avoid that conversation. Just say, oh, okay, we'll see. Every single time that a teacher has told me that about a student, it has been 0% true in my classroom, because I think it all depends on the relationships that you can build with students. To me, that is the most fun thing about teaching, is building relationships with students and getting to know them. Yeah, we still do a ton of English stuff, okay? But you can also be really smart about how you cover your standards. You can do, it's not like, okay, I'm going to do this standard today on this worksheet and then this standard tomorrow. Think of some projects where you can cover like 30 standards at once, okay? And then you do have that time to interact with your students. You do have time to tell a story here or there, and they can tell a story back, and you can really build that amazing aura in your classroom that you want, right? And so again, that comes back to you as the teacher. Be smart about how you set up your lesson plans. Some teachers look at the standards, they're like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to cover this? Easy, man. Just be creative in your standards, okay? Like come up with some awesome projects that cover literally like 20, 30 standards in one, okay? Like it can be done. You can do it. But anyway, looking for the good in students, looking for the good in my fellow teachers and coworkers, looking for the good in my school community has really honestly transformed my entire thought process about education. And I am very thankful for it. Now, does everybody think that way at every school? And all? Of course not. Okay, but you can't change them. You are only in charge of you, right? And when people say, oh, well, what's your teaching philosophy? I just want to say, if you, by a week in of being in my class, you should know it without even having to ask me, just because of the way that I conduct myself, the way that I handle problems, the way that I go about my lessons, the passion that you bring. Like If someone has to ask you what your teaching philosophy is after watching you in the classroom, then there's a problem with that. They should be able to pick up on it. So it's up to you to establish that. But man, you got to keep looking for the good, even with those kids sometimes when it's really hard. And this year, it especially had a pretty, had a new kid come in. Oh, it was rough, okay, for a while. But one day it was just me and that kid because all the others were taking the ACT and he was not going to be doing that. And it allowed us to have an hour and 45-minute conversation. And wow, it's been pretty different since then. So never underestimate getting to know someone and looking for the good in them. Second chances are okay. Giving a boost to people when they need it, it's okay, right? And you still set boundaries, you still have rules, and the kids know that, right? It shouldn't be like hidden. And some people, you don't have to make it so serious. Just be like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Okay, sorry, no, right? It doesn't have to be like this. Now, little Johnny, we need to have a 45-minute conversation after school about your behavior, okay? Like, it can just be, hey, stop, knock it off. You're driving me nuts, okay? Like, just stuff like that. Like, be real with them. What else? I can go on and on. Oh, then I went to the Amazon rainforest and I lived with an indigenous tribe in the middle of the Amazon rainforest with absolutely no connection to the outside world. And it was an amazing experience. I would highly recommend it if you guys get a chance to do that. Just there, again, kind of talking about philosophy, you don't have to ask the Sapara people, that's the name of the tribe that I lived with for a couple weeks. You don't have to ask them their philosophy because just by observing them and the way that they live, you know what it is. They have a care for the earth. They have such care for the environment, how they respect animals and nature, and how that really completely runs their everyday life, and how they treat the earth. And it just makes you want to be like a better steward of the world and all of this stuff. So you've probably figured out I love to travel. So traveling is huge. In Burwell, how are we doing on time? I gotta look at this. I haven't looked at it a single time yet. Okay. Burwell's pretty rural. Okay. We got Nebraska's Big Rodeo 100th anniversary coming up July 2021. I expect to see all of you there. Okay. Brooke, Jake, I know you guys are going to be there. Okay. Riley's going to maybe be there. All right. Very good. I just was taping a promotional video for that today, so it's on my mind. Anyway, Burwell's rural. I was very, I guess, lucky. I didn't realize it at the time. Maybe some people don't consider it lucky. It's just how it was. My parents really valued travel. And so each summer we went on a summer vacation. And none of my parents are not from this area originally. So I have no family really in the state of Nebraska. So just even going and visiting family was, flying someplace to a different state. So I was used to traveling, and but many of my friends and stuff growing up, they really hadn't traveled. They really hadn't been out of the state or things like that. And I noticed the same thing at Burwell with my students. And I know Brooke and Jacob are really pissed because I started the travel club after they graduated. So, but that's the other thing. If there's something that you are very passionate about, you can find a way to bring it into the classroom. For me, that's travel. And so I started a travel club at the school at Burwell, but my travel club is a little unique because it's a travel club for the school and community. It's not just for students, it's also for adults in the community, because I found that many adults in the community also had never really had the opportunity to travel, and they were feeling a little intimidated about planning a trip or things like that. So it's been a really wonderful partnership. It's been kind of beautiful actually to see like students and community members interact and travel together. And it just broadens horizons, right? I tell the kids with basically everything I do, you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it, but I am just simply making you aware of what is out there. Then it's up to you to do what you want with that. It's very heated, on a lot of political issues right now and societal issues. And obviously race is a huge issue and things like that, that we need to fix some major problems. Okay. And we have to to tackle that. But I always preface all of those tough conversations with, you don't have to agree with me. But I'm simply showing you that there is another side. I'm simply trying to make you aware that there is more, there are more options out there. There is another flip of the coin, okay? Because so many times, especially at rural schools, you know how it is. Like, you just kind of grow up and everybody kind of says the same thing. Everybody's thinking the same thing. And so it's kind of your job as a teacher to show them that there's another side. Again, I'm not telling you have to get in these huge political debates at school, but I'm kind of getting off where I was going with this. But anyway, it's very important right now, and it will be too when you become teachers, because all of our problems are not going to be fixed overnight, is that I have really started to shift my thinking of, I don't want to have a debate with people. I want to have a discussion with people. And that to me is much more powerful, to just sit down and have a discussion, ask some questions. Why? Where do those feelings come from? Can you remember where that stemmed from? Did an incident happen to you of why you feel this way or that way? And really just talk about it in level-headed tones, because here's my pet peeve about politics and hot button issues and stuff like that. Teachers are told that we need to stay away from political issues. But here's the problem, guys. If kids are never allowed to have a discussion about hot button issues, then guess what? They become adults who don't know how to have discussions about hot button issues. So then what happens? We don't have discussions about hot button issues. We have angry debates. We have angry, well, this is what I feel and I'm sticking to it, and the heck with you, right? And that's a problem. Again, you can have a very meaningful discussion in your classroom without ever bringing up a politician's name, without ever mentioning Democrat or Republican. You can have these meaningful conversations that need to happen. You have to be careful, right? And choose your words wisely, but that can happen. So I don't want you to feel scared of having those conversations, and always preface it with, I just want us to listen, learn, and then take action. That's kind of my own personal motto. Seems like in today's society, we have it backwards. We take action, and then we step back and go, oh, maybe I should have read an article about that, or oh, maybe I should have listened to someone who really knew what they were talking about, right? So my 3 steps are listen, learn, then take action. And your action may be different than my action would be, okay? But at least get involved, like listen, know the facts, learn from someone that has more information about it than you do. And this goes for myself too. I don't know it all, as you guys know, like, again, awful to be a know-it-all, gross, okay? So that's kind of, I guess, where I'll go with I kind of weave my way into the hot button issues, but it is important. And as teachers, you are a role model, whether you think you are or not. Even in your first year of teaching, kids will remember what you say. Have you ever done that before, where maybe you remember something that a teacher said to you in junior high or high school, and you thought it was fact because your teacher told you, and then you grow up and like 20 years later, you find out actually that was not a fact, and you're like, what? Like, you feel so let down, right? And I'm sure I've probably said something like that too that wasn't a fact, but I try really hard not to. Like, I try really hard to know the facts, and if I don't know something, I say it. I don't know. Let's look that up together. Like, you don't have to be a know-it-all, and don't pretend like you are. If you don't know something, be honest and say, I don't know. Let's look that up together right now. Okay, let's just take 5 minutes and do that. Because what teachers say sticks with kids. And that goes, for self-esteem issues, just for basic factual information. So in this really difficult time, no matter where you stand politically, if you go into a classroom and there are kids of color, there are homosexuals, guess what? If there's atheists, if there's Muslims, you have to teach them all, and you have to teach them all equally and fairly. And you need to think really long and hard about, is the stuff that you are teaching doing damage to them, or is it rising and bringing them up, right? Everyone in the class, okay? We've heard some horror stories over the last 6 months or so come out about, kids feeling targeted in the classroom because of their beliefs or this or that or the other. That should absolutely not happen on your watch. Okay. And if you're uncomfortable, like have a conversation with your students. Have a conversation about, I'm a little nervous about tackling this subject. Can you tell me how you're feeling so I can get started on the right foot with this? Like, that's okay. It's okay to do that. What else? Oh, okay. Here's another thing I thought of. First 3 years of teaching, loved it. Jumped out of bed every morning before my alarm clock went off, like could not believe I was getting paid. It was like that, cheesy cliche moment of like, I'm getting paid to do this. Like, oh my gosh, I found my dream job, right? Like that was me for the first 3 years of teaching. And then it's like, I don't want to say that necessarily went away, but it definitely faded, right? There was like, oh God, alarm clock goes off. You're like, oh my gosh, here we go again, right? Like, and you just sort of get into this like monotonous routine. Like, even though every day is different and every day, is something, and this is something that people don't like to talk about. And that's why I said we're going to get real, because nobody talks about this and it's okay to talk about it. I was like, man, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Like, is this really what I want to do? Because I was starting to lose some of that sparkle. I was starting to kind of lose some of that joy. And if you'll remember, that is when I applied for that fund for teachers, because I knew that I had to pursue my own passions. I had to pursue my own likes. I had to make time for what I really wanted to learn about as well. And that's when I started down my Holocaust and genocide education road. And that is what relit my spark, so to speak. And so if you are starting to feel that way, go to your administrators and say, see this awesome conference I just found online? I want to go to this. And yeah, I know I'm going to miss 3 or 4 days of school, but you know what? When I come back, I'm going to be so fired up. I'm going to have so many more awesome lessons. I can share with my students and the staff if they want to. Most of the time, they don't care. But, some of them might. But it's like all the time we hear teachers say like, oh, I'm doing it for the kids. I love the kids. Well, of course, right? Like, duh, like that. Of course you are. But you also have to realize that it's your life too. You're doing this for you too. You don't want to go to some job that's soul sucking and you hate it and you can't wait to get out of there every day, especially with teaching, right? And so you have to kind of be aware and do a self-check on yourself of, am I starting to lose my passion a little bit? If I am, what do I need to do to fix it? And here's the other reality, guys. Let's say you teach for a few years and you realize, you know what? This isn't for me. That's okay. Quit. Go do something else, please, right? We all know those teachers that they hate teaching and we're like, why are you doing this? You're like, why? So it's okay. Again, people don't want to talk about this, but you can be a teacher for 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years, and then decide, you know what? I think I'm going to move on to the next venture in my life. And that is totally okay. Now, with that said, you have to realize that there's going to be peaks and valleys, right? There's going to be years that are really awesome. There's going to be some that are not so awesome. And that's in every profession, no matter what you do. So you kind of have to have that inner awareness of, have I really lost my passion for teaching and I'm really ready to be done with it? Or am I just kind of having one of those down years, and that's okay. Not every year is going to be perfect and hunky-dory and all this stuff. But I'm letting you know that, one, it's okay to pursue your own passions and still have a career. Okay, you can go on, but your administrators are not going to come to you and say, oh, look, Jacob, I found this awesome 5-day national conference in New Orleans about World War II, and we'd like you to go. No, that doesn't happen. Okay. And admin, whatever. Some are great, some are not so great. You've all heard, but you have to be the one to seek out those conferences. You have to be the one to seek out those experiences that are going to keep you going and be like, yes, I cannot wait to get back in the classroom and tell my kids all about this. Like, you have to be responsible for that. The other thing with that is, how do I say this? Like I was saying, so many teachers get hung up on, oh, well, I'm going to have to miss like 2 days of school to go to that conference. Yep, you are. Get a sub, get your class covered, do it, is basically what I'm trying to say here. So yes, let's take questions. I love questions. Go.
So we kind of met briefly through the Nebraska Community Foundation, actually, and through NCF, I have realized a lot of what you're talking on, the importance of community. And I was just wondering, like, when you first started in Burwell, what did those first steps look like getting plugged into your community?
Great question. So for me, I felt like I was kind of halfway plugged into the community because I was from Taylor, which was the neighboring town. So I knew like a few people, I knew Burwell. I've gone to Burwell my whole life, things like that. But for me, it was seeking out community organizations and making an effort to say, hey, is this an open board? Do you have to be elected or nominated? Or I would like to learn more about your organization. One thing that you can do, especially at a school, is if you say that you maybe want to get involved with the alumni association and help, like from a teacher's perspective, like even if you didn't go to that school, if you're not an alumni, but you can just say, hey, I'd love to kind of keep the alumni group up to date on what's going on at the school, share with you the positives that are going on in the school and community for when you have your next alumni banquet or whatever. Maybe you could mention some of these things. The community fund, I don't know where you guys are all going to be going, but the Nebraska Community Foundation has become a huge part of my life. I actually just found out, you guys were the first group to know that I just was elected, or whatever you want to call it. I made it to the final round of cuts or whatever, that I'm going to be the newest board member for the Nebraska Community Foundation. So I'm pretty jazzed up about that. But they are in many communities across Nebraska. And it's literally, I'm going to give them a plug here. It's literally a win-win situation. There are no strings attached. You do good stuff for your community reaps the benefits. You get to be involved in all these behind the scene projects in the community, and it also encompasses the school. So it also helps out the school. It's really wonderful. If you're a churchgoer, I know not everybody is, but if you are a churchgoer, find a church in that town. Maybe you don't want to go all the time, but maybe you just want to go for a little bit, or join a group there, where you can get to meet people. Volunteer to help with 4-H or the county fair, because that is such a great way where you see a lot of kids and parents. So helping with 4-H can be a really, I'm a 4-H, like go 4-H, whoop, whoop, okay. So those would be my go-tos, like get involved with the church, 4-H, the community fund, the alumni association, and then also just participating in the school events, like go to a volleyball game, go to a football game, go to a speech meet on a Saturday and see those kids. Don't just focus on athletics, but show all the kids that you care. You don't have to go to all of them, but show up, just show up and now this year that's very difficult, and I'm not doing that at all because I have to be very careful around my dad with his heart transplant and COVID. And so I told the kids on the very first day, I said, I love you guys. I support you. I want you to do very well, but I'm not coming to any of your stuff. Sorry. Okay. But in a normal year, you would go to their activities and then comment, like, hey, you did a really great job. I saw you there, stuff like that. Okay. Next one. Is there some in the chat? when you got your job, did you have a coach or mentor to help you navigate your first year? Oh, that's so sweet. No. So at a lot of small schools, I don't know how it is at other schools. My only career, I mean, I did 1 year at Papillion La Vista, and because it was at the Zoo Academy, there were only 4 teachers there. It was just the 4 core teachers. So it was math, English, science, and social studies. And so, no, we were just kind of on our own there, you know, with the guidance of the district, you know, or whatever. And then when I came to Burwell, I got a Burwell hoodie and like a stocking cap and like a, hey, you can do it, you know, sort of a thing. That is one thing that at Burwell and others, like I say, I can't speak for other small schools. Maybe they do a better job than Burwell, but it is something that I've tried to do then to other teachers who start at Burwell of, because, you know, just little things like, how are we supposed to do, you know, detention here? Or what are we supposed to do on a 10 o'clock start day? Do we still dress up? Do we wear jeans? You know, like just little things like that can really, so if you can find someone like, you know, kind of latch on to someone to, if they don't provide that, don't be afraid to ask. I remember we had an art teacher a few years ago. We had a 10 o'clock start and she didn't come, you know, because obviously we had teacher meetings first, you know, from 8 to 10, and then school started at 10. She didn't come. She just thought she was supposed to come at 10 o'clock too. So, and then of course she was mortified and so embarrassed, and we're like, hey, it's cool. Like, it's our fault. Nobody told you. So just stuff like that. Oh, yay, good. Some schools, yeah, that's great. And the bigger schools usually do a better job with it. I think at the small schools, we just kind of take it for granted that, oh, everybody can just kind of figure it out, or everybody kind of knows. And a lot of it's trial by error. But don't be afraid to ask, and you'll kind of be able to get the vibes of the other teachers around you to be like, who's going to be just honest and open with you and not, you know, act like a know-it-all towards you, not all that. So what else? Hit me with another one. Don't be shy, folks, or I'll just keep going off on more tangents. Teacher of the year. Should we talk about teacher of the year a little bit? Would that be good? In 10 years from now, where do you see yourself in the field of education? Oh, great question. So I'm like split 50-50. There's a part of me that still thinks that I will be just happily teaching at Burwell, teaching English there. We do live on the family ranch, so not only do we teach, but my husband and I also ranch and kind of help my parents out with that. So it's kind of like we're not really in a position to make like a big move. However, if the right job came along, like my dream job of working at the Holocaust Museum in DC, then I would take it. So if something like that ever came up and it was the right fit or the right time, what I really love to do is teach teachers how to teach the Holocaust and tough issues like genocide and things like that, because a lot of teachers want to do it, but they're scared because they're like, gosh, like how do you even begin, right? How do you even go down that road? And so actually that's what I've been doing a lot of the last couple of years is I go around the country and I put on workshops for teachers about how to teach the Holocaust, and they've been very well received. And that has been through the Holocaust Museum. So I'm kind of hoping to make that a little bit more like this year, obviously has been difficult with COVID, but been up to Green Bay, Wisconsin a couple times to do workshops up there with their teachers. And then all over Nebraska, we've done Kearney, Omaha, Lincoln. We did another one in Omaha. So, and then just some other things around the country that have been really fun. So, and that's like where my people are. Like, I feel like I have found my group when I'm with other Holocaust educators. And that's where I really feel just like understood, I guess. Because, you know, at my school, I'm just like, oh, that crazy teacher, that's the Holocaust teacher, right? You know, so, and sometimes you start to feel like you're on an island a little bit sometimes at small schools. And, but then when you're surrounded by like-minded people, you're reminded that, you know what, there's a lot of good going on out there all across the country. So it's just like refreshing. I saw another one in here. When looking for conferences, experiences per se, how do you usually go about the process? Oh, okay, great question. Now, you guys got to bear with me here. I'm not trying to knock. You guys, when I say ESUs, do you know what that means? So ESUs are the educational service units, right? They're all across the state and all the schools belong to them. Like Burwell belongs to the one in Kearney, ESU 10, shout out ESU 10. Okay, wonderful people that work at the ESU. They're doing great programs for teachers, you know, usually at a very low cost for your school and things like that. However, I'm going to say this. There are really wonderful conferences and workshops out there beyond the ESU. Your administration is going to tell you, oh, just go to the ESU and take a workshop on how to run a smart board. No, thank you. Okay. That's not really serving my needs or bringing me any joy or like, yeah, smart boards. Okay. So you just have to, and I would be happy because I'm learning this as well. There is so much more out there than I ever thought. So if you're like a history person, the World War II conference in New Orleans is like the one. So if that's you, and I also want to go to that because, sorry, history people, but the best way to teach history is through a story. So English, literature, here we go. Okay. So I don't just limit myself to English or language arts conferences. I also seek out history conferences. I also am finding that I really value the fine arts conferences. So I'm going to some of those national ones as well. But you just start, like, once you start Googling and once you start digging in there, it's like, whoa. And guys, there's financial assistance out there, like for travel, stuff like that. All of you should sign up to go to Belfer at the Holocaust Museum. It's Belfer, B-E-L-F-E-R. They have one session for social studies, one session for English. They will give you $1,000 scholarship, especially if you tell me that you're going, I can put in a good word. Okay, I'm just saying I've been 100% on the people that I've put in a good word for have got the scholarship. So, but that will cover your airfare and your hotel. So then, you know, it's like free basically. So that would be awesome. But there are opportunities out there like that for you. So seek them out, Google them, what you're interested in. Let me know, I'll help. When having discussions in class about current issues or social injustices, have you ever had, what did it say? Students get upset or hostile with other students or yourself? If so, how did you diffuse the situation? Great question. I've been thinking about this a lot lately over the last year or so, when tensions seem to really be reaching like a tipping point almost in our country and society. I have had kids definitely that disagree with me. And what we have to establish right away is that that is okay. That's okay. I'm not trying to convince you to come to my side. We don't want parents thinking that you're like brainwashing their kids, right, in the classroom. But I am still going to make a point to stay calm, which is very hard when you talk about hot button issues. And you have to keep reminding them, I am just simply showing you that there is another side. And I would love for you to at least think about that other side. And sometimes they may completely blow you off and like, you're crazy, Helberg, you know. But you know what? They'll go home, and whether they admit it to you or not, they will think about it. Even if it's just a little bit, they will think about it. Now with parents, I have to say, now there's been a few parent things, you know, oh, why'd you give my kid that grade, you know, stuff like that. But with social issues and hot button issues, I haven't had any problems. And I know that the parents think differently than I do. Like, I know that. And so when I ponder this, and I think about this, and I hope that you guys can all get to this as well in your careers, is because I'm involved in the community, because they know that I am, you know, I value the community, I love the school and the community, I want what's best for it and their kids, that it's almost like they disagree with me, but yet they still respect me. They respect me, they respect my opinions. I've never had anybody, I mean, they may talk about me behind my back, but I can't do anything about that, right? And here's the other thing. once you have enough self-confidence in yourself, this is, I mean, I'm not advising this for first year teachers, but once I came to the conclusion that I didn't care if I got fired, first, like, you know, then it was like, made teaching a lot easier. No, I don't want you to get fired, but you kind of, I don't want to say you have to have that mindset, but it's like, if someone comes in and is saying blatantly racist remarks or blatant remarks that are putting students down, that is wrong. Okay. And I'm not going to be afraid to stand up for that. And if I lose my job over something like that, so be it. Like, once I have made that up in my mind of, okay, fire me, I'll go someplace else. Like, it's been a very freeing experience. And I think over the next couple years in education, you're seeing teachers now getting fired for things that they have put on social media, and people are calling them out. And I love it, because you should call them out. You should take a screenshot of that and say, hey, superintendent, did you see that your teacher just posted this? What are you going to do about it? You are adding to the problem. Okay. And I don't feel any regret of doing something like that, because in my heart, I feel that that is the right thing to do. So no, I guess in all honesty, I haven't had a ton of pushback. The other thing that really helped me, that our teacher of the year, one of our mentors told us, we did this exercise and it really helped me, was you kind of do like an if but statement. So you think of the worst possible thing that could happen to you in teaching. And so I said, here was my worst possible situation. If everyone in the community turns their back on me because of my beliefs, okay, that was my like worst possible case scenario, that I'm like ousted from the community, people don't like me anymore. And then you add in the second part of the sentence, I will still. So if everyone in the community turns their back on me because of my beliefs, I will still teach with passion and teach every child in my classroom. Or I will still know in my heart that I was doing what was best for all, you know. So, and that really just helped me. Like, okay, what's the worst possible thing? Everybody in town hates me. Okay, all right. Well, I'm still going to be at peace knowing that I did what was best for all students, and I'm still going to show up for all students. Like, okay. But then it makes it seem like not so scary, right? What I know we're getting, it's I'll talk all night, but I know you guys probably like homework and things to do, so.
Yeah, we're kind of at the tail end here.
Yes.
So are there any final questions from anyone?
Do you guys care if I take a picture for my own scrapbook? I've been trying to take a picture of, I won't put it on social media, but just kind of like for my own thing. That'd be great. So yay, happy faces. Where's Brooke? There she is. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Yay. Okay, thank you.
Well, I think I speak for all of us when I say thank you so much, Megan, for being here with us. This was amazing. I'm pretty sure you are my teacher soul sister. So, right, we passionate people who just love teaching for the good of our students just have to stick together. And we have got a screen full of them right here in front of us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to bugging you in the future.
Yes, please do. If anybody wants to email me, reach out. Oh, I will put in a small plug. I'm going to try to do better. We do have a Nebraska Teacher of the Year Facebook page. I haven't updated it since maybe June. So, but I'm going to try to do better my last couple months. I told them, watch out, coming in hot November 1st, my last 2 months, I'm going to go out with a bang. So I'm going to post all sorts of updates and get everybody all fired up because I only got 2 months left. So I'm like, yeah, because you kind of have to, you know, like when you're Teacher of the Year, we have a few rules and things with media and stuff like that. But now that I'm almost done, I'm like, here we go. So
All right. Well, thank you, Megan, and thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you all.